Good morning, everybody. Welcome to an historic miracle. Traffic was lovely coming from Portland, but it's on now. And as you last veterans, come have a seat, please. I will get going. My name is Ken Buckles. I am the Veterans Military Outreach Coordinator at this awesome museum, Evergreen, Aviation and Space Museum. I'm going to make some introductions before we do the presentation of the colors and national anthem. First, you all need to be aware what this museum, this whole museum campus represents and why. We would not be here if it wasn't for the vision and dream of Captain Michael Smith and the son of the owner and founder of this, Del Smith. When you see the statue out in front of this, that was his best friend. And then Captain Michael King Smith, on the other side, statue of him. They were tragically killed in a car accident in 1995, and it was his dream and vision to build this amazing museum campus. All of this on this side is a father's tribute and legacy to his son, Mr. Del Smith, right there. Thank you. We have with us today the president of Evergreen, Blythe Berselli, former Governor Vic Atiyeh, which will be a keynote speaker, the former past Director of Department of Veteran Affairs, Jim Willis. Raise your hand when I yell, because we're going to go fast. Don't do the applause till the end. Cameron Smith, the current Department of Veteran Affairs, Iraq Marines. McMinnville School Superintendent Mary Alice Russell. McMinnville Mayor Rick Olson. The McMinnville Fire Department and Chief Rich Liefert, and the Newburgh Fire Department and Chief Les Hallman and their crew. And those fire departments, McMinnville donated $1,900 to this cause, and Newburgh donated $2,000. I'm so impressed and proud of those both fire departments. The McMinnville Police and the Chief Ron Noble, the Yamhill County Deputy Sheriffs, and their Sheriff Crabtree, is he here? His son was a veteran in Iraq. Anyway, our executive director, Larry Wood, was a Vietnam Marine and fighter pilot. Jim and Kathy Page, are they here? Nope, I'm going to get on him. We have representatives from the tribes of the Sioux, Apache, Yakima, Seminole, Muskogee Creek, Blackfeet. We have from Los Angeles, Orange County, the United Mexican American Veterans. We have underage veterans of military service from around the United States. Do you know what they all have in common, those underage? They tell themselves they're a bunch of liars. Lieutenant General Russell Davis. We have vets in this room from Iraq, Afghanistan, Desert Storm, conflicts, Cold War, Vietnam, Korea, World War II. The chosen few from Korea, McMinnville legend Gunny Brandon. We have Tuskegee Airman. Every year he says this is his last trip to Oregon, but he keeps coming back. Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Jefferson. Emmy producer award winner Jan Thompson, a professor at Southern Illinois. Barbara Kustra, the executive director of the Montana Museum of Art, and the famous artist, Bataan Death March survivor Ben Steele. His artwork's here. Hello, Mr. Deacon, representing the LST Navy, World War II, superintendent of Reedsport. Good to see you, sir. And the special guests of honor, we have 16 of them now, ex-POWs from the Defenders of Bataan and Corregidor. Please stand or raise your hand. Now you can applause. It is our honor, students, if you don't know, you're going to learn it now. You stand when the colors are presented, and you remain standing after the national anthem when the colors are posted, okay? If you don't do it right, there's a lot of military veterans in here that will, never mind, we won't go there. It's my honor from Oklahoma, the Seminole Honor Guard. Please present the colors. Please rise, everybody. My wife, Melinda Buckles, will now sing the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held as the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous flight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Color Guard, post the colors. You may be seated. There's another special guest I'd like to recognize. He is a board member here at the museum. Where's Serge de Rovencourt? Right over there. He is an impressive man. You see, when he was a young teenager, right? The Nazis came to get his family in France. Mom told him and his sister to get upstairs, third floor. They went out the window and jumped 3 stories, was hurt. Brother and sister joined the French resistance underground, fighting the Nazis for the rest of the war, and he never saw his family members again. They were sent to Auschwitz. But he's an amazing man, lives in Portland, Oregon. Serge de Rovencourt. All right, we have 2 guest speakers, and the first one is former governor, starting offensive lineman and defensive lineman for the University of Oregon, Mr. Vic Atiyeh.
Now, the first thing I have to do is clear my record. I was not an outstanding lineman at the University of Oregon. I became that way after I was elected governor, but thinking about this day, this honor, I want to share my thoughts in regard to those who are veterans and have been veterans over a long period of time. I don't think of a mass of veterans. I think of one. As governor and as I operating with budgets and all, temptation is to think X number of whatever it is. But if you think of one, then it becomes a real person. X number is not a person. I come from World War II. That's my period of life. I'm going to tell you two stories about that becomes personal. One was my fraternity brother at the University of Oregon. And incidentally, if there's any Fijis out there, I've forgotten the grip. And most of us enlisted. And on a March day, most of them left. Now, I didn't include it because I had a cast on my leg. I got a letter from my friend. He was over in England and said he was going to write me a long letter. But I've been pretty busy. The next letter I got, which is what they call a V mail, and of course we older folks know what that is. And he said, I'm over in Europe now. It isn't very pretty, but I'm still going to write you a long letter. And the last paragraph said, I didn't realize how much I wanted to live till I got here. 2 weeks later, I read in the Oregonian that he'd been killed in action. He's still there. Bryce Lynn Sightsinger. Now, that's a name I know, but we're all Bryce Lynn Sightsingers. The second, I was at our family store and I saw this marvelous mud-covered Plymouth parked in front of the store. And I wondered what that was. He said, there's a captain there who wants to talk to you. So I went and met with him. He unfolds the telegram. I regret to inform you that Private Edward E. Attea and Private Richard A. Attea are missing in action. And they were captured by the Germans at the Battle of the Bulge and spent most of the rest of the war in a prison camp. Now, I know them by their face, but I still think of them as one individual. Prisoner of wars, all of you that have been prisoners know that was not a very attractive place to be. And they suffered mightily, came out malnutrition, jaundice, really in bad shape. So here we have 3 people I talked to you about. But I think of them as one. And I'm going to be very frank with you and say that you are listening to me and those that aren't here. You fought, somebody took shots at you. Others, of course, were wounded and some were killed. So that young people today don't have to worry about anything. They think marijuana is nothing to it. So many I see in Portland are learned how to write on cardboard. They want some help. They didn't out looking for a job. That's why you fought. I don't think so. That's why these folks don't really know and understand what this nation is all about. Like those of you who put your life at risk. We formed a country which is the people run the country. That's a democracy. And if the people are strong and moral, America has no reason to be worried. If, however, we're not strong, moral, and I would add also not taking their vote seriously, then America is not in good shape and they need to worry. I worry. I'm a bit close to politics and government, and I worry. And I worry about my grandchildren. Gee, they're lovely people. Mine are the prettiest grandchildren in the world. The prettiest. Well, the boys aren't very pretty, but the girls are. Okay, I get the hint. Anyway, I thank you all for letting me speak to you. Please remember that there were men and women who went out and said, okay, shoot me. They were willing to take that risk. But they didn't want to die. And we should remember them as we take it our responsibility as Americans. Ken, I've known for some time. I have a speech on you. No. He's really the genius behind the recognition of veterans, starting with the schools several years ago. This is the best turnout I've ever seen. Ken, thank you very much.
Sorry, Governor, but you're not telling the truth. I happen to know you were a good football player. The next, last keynote speaker is Lieutenant Colonel Alex Jefferson, Tuskegee Airman, and he will tell you about his prisoner of war experience. The stairs are over there.
First of all, thank you. Smitty, thank you. How many people saw the movie Red Tail? Raise your hand. Nothing in that damn movie is true. It's a story. It's a story. I'm like the mosquito running through a nudist colony. I got so much to cover, I don't know where in the heck to start. I represent black men who fought in World War II. We were not supposed to be able to fly an airplane. That's racism and segregation. I was shot down, strafing, flying one of those. Got hit at about as high as that plane, about 100 feet. Damn shell came up to the floor. We were strafing, and I pulled up, and I came out, and when the parachute popped, I'm in the trees. And standing right over there was a German soldier, says, "Ach so, yeah." I said, "Oh, hell, you got me, God damn it." I spent 9 months in Germany as a POW. They knew more about me than I knew about myself. They even had my graduation picture. I went to school in Detroit, went to college in Atlanta. I had all my marks of high school and Clark. They even knew in Germany how much taxes my dad paid on his house in Detroit. I was treated as an officer and a gentleman. No beatings, no torture. I literally set the war off, even to the place where I was able to draw pictures for a book. Came back home. Oh, by the way, I saw Dachau. I was in a Camp 7A near Munich, where General Patton's Third Army liberated the camp. And the next day, somebody said, there's a place down there with a lot of dead people. What in the hell do you mean? Now remember now, no television, no Time magazine. We had to find it. You could smell it a mile before you got to it. The ovens were still warm where they were burning bodies. And then somebody has the audacity to tell me that the Holocaust never happened. Then I have to use some expletive, deleted words to let them know about man's inhumanity to man. I talk to young people today. Oh my God, they killed the Jews. I said, hey, wait a minute, back up. Damn it, what's happening in Albania? What's happening in Syria? What's happening in the Middle East? And damn it, we're in Afghanistan. Well, that's another, I don't even talk about it, Afghanistan. Came back home, and part of my job was to help change this country. We were part of the civil rights movement. By the way, women, you still got a hell of a long way to go. We're still fighting because a woman today only makes 75% of what a man makes. You remember the WASP, the women who flew airplanes in World War II? They were kicked out in 1945. Kicked out. No benefits, no hospitalization, not even a thank you. Today, we have one job: to tell and teach our young people how to survive in this world. I tell young kids, damn it, you don't join a baseball game and play football rules. The life we live is a game. Get your education, damn it. Learn how to speak the English language, math, and go to church. These are rules that we live. This is a game. Join the game and make the game better. You cannot change a game by taking, you can't change anything by throwing stones up against the wall. Only way you have to learn how to become part of the game. We're telling young people today, wake up. Find your place in this country. Best damn country in the world. Let's face it. And some of these kids, I tell everybody, I'm not going back to Africa. Germans are not going back to Germany. Italians are not going. This is the best country in the world. Tell the young people, wake up and join the game. Jackie Robinson could not play baseball until he got in the game. And once he got in the game, he changed the game. Young people, all of you over there, we're talking to you. We're over the hill, hell, let's face it. And we're trying to get you to find out how to take, by the way, I tell everybody, 10 years from now, we are going to be gone. And somebody's got to take my place. And I'm looking at somebody, young people with the guts. Take care. Thank you.
I went to all the high schools, and of course I asked them, have you heard of Corregidor? Have you heard of Baton Death March? And mostly zero, and a couple teachers knew. And then I said, all right, I want you to remember, do you remember Pearl Harbor? December 7th, 1941, over 2,000 Americans were killed in that attack by the Japanese military. 2,000, tragic, huh? And I said, now, pretend no TVs, No computers, no phones, no internet, nothing. Their generation grew up, and me too, as a kid, we got our news from the newspaper the next day, and they couldn't wait to read. After Pearl Harbor was attacked, we heard nothing until April 9th, 1942, this paper in Oregon, 36,853 lost in Bataan. And then I said 3,000 died on September 11th. Tragic. Over 6,000 in 10 years, like Iraq and Afghanistan. This is one battle. Very few survived. And this is an absolute miracle today. I know your buddies had a part to do with this. I know, I felt it. One of their last reunions for most of them was in Norfolk, Virginia, and 10 of them were there. And we have 15 of them here, and another one that crashed the party from who was in Los Banos. When he was liberated, he was 12 years old. He was put in this camp 8 through 12 years old. Where are you, Mr. Wheeler? Right there? Yeah. So we have 16. One is, I believe is there another one that was in Germany prison camp? Just Mr. Jefferson? Lieutenant Colonel, excuse me. And some of them, it's very, very difficult for them to travel. And I know I spent from 9 in the morning until 8:30 last night picking them up, getting them on shuttles and cars and here, and I'm just in awe of them. And thank you so much, Defenders of Bataan and Corregidor. We are deeply thrilled and honored to have you here. Okay, at this time, we're going to do the first rotations. As you schools should know, there's 3 rotations, and Group A, McMinnville and Canby, McMinnville Group A and Canby will stay here. Group B, McMinnville and McMinnville Group B will go to the theater. Group C is Sheridan and Dunaway. You're going to go to the Aviation Museum, and then you rotate from there. Is everybody, teachers, you're all good with this? Okay. Group D, that's Coach McIrvin. Group D. Okay, they're in the chapel. And then the 2 junior ROTC, you're here for all the sessions. All right, you are dismissed to go to those areas. We need someone to escort Ken Deacon right here to the theater. Don Loudner, where's Mr. Loudner at? Don Loudner, you're the first speaker and you're the second speaker. And Robert Delsai and Lauren Corpus, you are the third speaker in the theater. You've been there, so you know where you go. The XPOWs stay here, and Jan Thompson, come on up. When do they want to do that? At this. We're going to have Assembly of Honor. We'll do it then when we come back. And then we come back after the 3 sessions. You all come back here for the Assembly of Honor. So hustle around. Don't be tardy.
Good morning. I have the pleasure of asking questions to our former XPOWs. So I'm going to start with, I told them these were going to be softball questions. First question, and as you probably all know, these men were prisoners of the Japanese for 3.5 years. They were starved, beaten. 1 out of 3 died in captivity. So look around and find 2 people next to you and only, one's going to come back. So, first question. When did you stop thinking about girls?
When did you stop thinking about girls?
I've never stopped yet.
When we got back from overseas, the doctor said, you probably won't have any kids. We had 5.
When did you stop thinking about girls, Bill?
The only time I stopped was when I had malaria and dysentery, and I became unconscious, and they took me to the zero ward where everybody was supposed to die. And after I come out of there, I recuperated a little bit, and I still thought about girls.
I'm 94, but I still haven't quit thinking about girls.
Okay, that was the warm-up. Do we need to put that on my...
With all due respect, I learned this 18 years ago. I have children and grandchildren and other veterans who want to say short speeches in the mics, and we would never get anything accomplished. I know it was a good story, but please ask if you want to do something, and probably the answer is going to be no because we're pressed for time. Thank you.
Okay. Next question. As you know, these men were starved, and Bill mentioned the Zero Ward. The Zero Ward was a place in one of the prison camps where the men were taken when they were giving up, and they died. Very few came out of there alive. Okay? So, next question. What was the grossest thing you had to eat? Did any of you guys eat dog? And if you did, how was it prepared?
Yes, I've eaten dog, and it was prepared on a coal stove in the barracks.
Well, how did you catch the dog, and how was it killed?
Well, I didn't catch him personally, but any dog that went through the camp didn't make it out the other side. But I got a couple of pieces of it.
Did you eat dog?
We didn't have dogs in the camp. We didn't have cats. But before we were captured by the Japanese, I ate monkey meat, lizard tail, the iguana. They throw them in a hot water that was boiling and kill them, and just like chicken. It was really good.
Bill, did you eat dog?
Oh, yeah.
And how did you catch the dog, and how did you kill him?
The dogs?
Yeah, the dogs.
Oh, they brought them into camp in a big truck with bodies, and they cut them up and served them for our meals.
Did you have a favorite part?
Favorite what?
Leg. Do they have breasts? I guess. Dogs, legs, breasts. Did you have a favorite part?
We had no choice. Whatever they give us, we ate it.
What's the question?
Did you eat dog?
Yes, I ate dog, and I was always interested in how they prepared the dog. They took the dog for a couple of days and gave it all the water it wanted to drink until it got cleaned out. Then about the third day, they would take and stuff the dog, have the dog eat all it wanted of white rice, onions, and things like that. And then they killed it and either deep roasted it or spit roasted on top, and it had its own dressing. So that's the way that the Filipino chefs prepared their. And when I was in Mindanao, they always took a nice young Jap and brought him home and took him and cured him the same way. And I never ate the human, but they all criticized me for not eating them. They always said, "Why kill them if you don't eat them?"
Mindanao is a small island. The Philippines is made up of over 7,000 islands. And Oscar was down in an area where they're the headhunters. And the Filipinos would normally eat dog, and that's exactly how they would prepare it. But they didn't prepare the dog like that in a prison camp, did they? Do you know? Did they prepare it like that in a prison camp, the dog?
Oh, I know. I don't think I ever had any meat in prison camp. We had spoiled fish heads or something like that, but I don't think during the whole time that ever was served meat in prison camp.
How many of you, and I would probably have to think all of you, were beaten by your guards? And do you remember why you were beaten? Can you remember maybe the worst time?
Yeah, I was beaten a few times. The first time it was my own fault. I worked in a factory for the Japanese, and a Chinese boy. They had Japanese boys and Chinese boys that worked in the factory too, small kids. And one of the Chinese boys gave me some tobacco. And when we left the factory, they searched you, and when you got back to the camp, they searched you. But at the factory, I passed. But at the camp, the guard found the tobacco, and I was taken into the camp commander's office, and they wanted to know how I got it, and I wouldn't tell them. And the interpreter took his shoe off, like a GI shoe, and beat me around the head with it. And then they took a guard and took me back to the factory to point out the person that gave me the tobacco. And we got over to the factory, and I worked with a Chinese fellow on a machine, and he wasn't there. So we went into the office where a Japanese American had been visiting Japan when the war broke out, and they kept him there and used him for an interpreter and an office manager. And I told him that a Japanese boy gave me the tobacco. Well, that made the guard mad, and he beat me with a rifle, and I had a hard time getting back to camp, but I got back to camp, and I was thrown in a brig for I think it was 2 weeks, and it was about 30 below zero. I got a blanket every other day and a bowl of rice every other day for 3 weeks.
My worst episode was with the Hancho at the shipyard, Mitsubishi shipyard in Yokohama, Japan. One-on-one, I had a tendency to argue a little bit, saying, if we do it this way, it'll work better. I didn't give a damn about whether I was violating POWs or not, but I went too far. Hancho came after me one day with a cold chisel, surprised me, went over my shoulder, broke the skin on my back. I got a Purple Heart out of it. Anyway, I reached up and grabbed his hand until he cooled down a little bit. I let him go, and I said to myself, Bill, you've gone too far. So sure enough, there was a Jap worker right over there he come running over. I found out later he was a professional boxer. I just put my hands down. I said, I'm going to take it. He hit me right square in the face and knocked me down to the ground. When I got up, I looked around. The Japs were walking away. They had saved face, and so had I. And I was still alive. Thank you.
Bill, were you ever beaten? And if so, can you tell us about it?
On several occasions. I remember when we worked on the farm, the food wasn't for us, it was for the Japanese, but we had to grow the food. And if you were caught with any food, there were several types of punishment. One was to just knock you down, then you had to jump up and all high and get knocked down again. Another one, if he was talking to another prisoner, he would stand up and slap each other. And if you weren't slapping each other hard enough, the guard would do it. Another one was to have you kneel with your legs flat on the ground and put a shovel handle or something between your knees, and you had to sit back on that, which cut off the circulation to your feet. And after about 5 minutes or 10 minutes, they tell you to get up, and you couldn't. You had to fall over and wait till the blood circulated again before you could get your legs in motion. And several were severe beatings. I remember one time we moved a building in Camp O'Donnell, and they took all the floorboards out of the building. It was about 80 foot long and about 40 foot wide, filled it full of prisoners, and then they lifted and moved the building. We had a guard named Little Speedo, and he'd run around on top of everybody. If you didn't think you were doing it right, he'd slap you on the head with a hammer handle. And several occasions. There's one thing I would like to say. I'm going to deviate just a little bit here. Nobody ever mentions the fact that we were bombed the same day that Pearl Harbor was. We were bombed on the 8th, which was because of the international date, it was the 7th. And they destroyed our entire Air Force on the ground, so we had no air support for the entire war. And that's about it.
Thank you, Bill.
As far as being beaten, I was never really beaten, but I was given punishment at one time. Was stripped naked and stood with a stick over my head, like someone had told them that's how they tortured the Marines, and they threw water on me, and I still have frostbite from having stood in the feet froze. But as far as being beaten, I was never really beaten. A few cuffs, but never like some of the people. They would beat them till their head would swell up to twice its size. I saw men that were just, you don't see how they even lived through it.
So there were some really tough guards out there. Do any of you remember any one guard specifically? And did you ever fantasize how you were going to kill this guard? And so how were you going to kill this guard? And don't sugarcoat it. How are you going to kill your guard?
Well, we had one guard. He was an interpreter, and he was educated at UCLA in California. The first camp that I was in Mugden, Manchuria, the men were sick, and they had dysentery, and they soiled their blankets, and so I was on a detail to boil the blankets to keep the cholera down. And I still don't remember whatever happened, but this Japanese guard, his name was Kashima. He lined the fellows so on this detail up, and he went down the line, and he hit each one of them in the face with his bare fist. And When it got to me, well, I rolled with it. It didn't hurt me too much. But I've always thought he was the same age, same big as I am. And I've always thought that I would have liked to have had him on equal terms.
I didn't have any experience with a bad guard, but I saw what happened to some of our members. I don't know what they did out at the shipyard, but this one guy, they brought him in and they put him in a little box, and it was the middle of the winter, colder than the dickens, and he couldn't stand up and he couldn't sit down. And he had to stay in that thing for, I don't know, he liked to died. And some of the guys had to hold buckets of water all night long. And our battery unit, the 30 men that we had in the prison camp, this group, we had to spend a night because we didn't tell the Japs who was stealing out of the galley, stealing grain, and so they punished the whole group for the actions of one. We didn't give in on it.
Bill, did you have a rotten guard, and did you fantasize how you would kill him? And if so, how?
I don't really recall that. I know there's a lot of them that I was very unhappy with. On the death march of Bataan, as we were marching, we had no food or water, and it was on the march for about 5 days. And the guards would bayonet people. Anybody falling out would be bayoneted or shot. And if there was water, we crossed a couple of streams, and anybody that bowed down to get water from the stream was either shot or bayoneted. We lost thousands of men on that march. And very few Japanese that I really fantasize about killing. I'd like to beat them up, but that's about it.
With the bayonettings on the death march, and hopefully your teachers talked to you about the death march and what that was this the first time then you were seeing atrocities on the death march?
What?
Was this the first time you saw atrocities, was while on the death march?
At the beginning in the compound where we were organized before we went on the march, there was a lot of brutality going. I had no contact with Japanese except through the sights of a machine gun until that time, and I didn't receive any punishment during that time.
Okay. Guard that you wanted to kill?
Yes, I definitely did. This is Soshawa, who was known in the Mitzi Madhouse as, which was the camp at Kawasaki, and he had a very short fuse, and the least little thing why he would do some of the judo tricks on the fellas and all, and one night I was in charge of the detail, and I was making a report, and for some reason I displeased him. He drew his sword and like he was going to hit me, and he turned it quick in his hand and hit me with the flat side of the blade instead of the knife blade. And it was a samurai custom that he had to draw blood, so he cut his own little finger to make the blood for the knife. But he finally got killed in the bombing raid at the Mitzi Madhouse in July, just before the surrender, when there was 22 POWs were killed, and a number of the Jap guards were also killed.
In the camps, they didn't have a lot of accommodations, hygiene like what we have. Tell us, what's the longest you went without a bath? And when you did take a bath, how did you take a bath?
Well, it's funny. I can only remember 2 times of taking a bath in 3.5 years. I just don't remember how we took baths. But I remember one time that they had it was like a swimming pool, a wading pool, and it was warm water. And I got in that. We in the camp we had lice in our clothes, and we called them steam squirrels. But and they would boil them in that water, and that's the only time I can ever remember being in water.
We look forward to the bath like you can't believe. We worked 9 days. We got the 10th day off to get the fleas and the lice out of our clothes and to take a bath. Now, we took a bath, and you're supposed to soap up outside this soaking place with soap and water, and then wash your soap off, and then get into this chamber. About 6-8 guys could sit in there, and it was heated with steam, and it would click, and until it was so darn hot, it's all you could do to stand it. Well, some of the guys forgot to use the soap, so they just wanted to get into the hot water. And guess what? After 300 men in our camp, the last ones got in not water, but soup. That's all it was, is hot soup.
Yeah, there was a running joke. There were, prisoners from other countries like Australians and British and Dutch, and the joke was to try to take the bath before the British, I think, took their baths, because supposedly they were the filthiest. Hope we don't have any Brits here. What was the longest period of time between baths, and how did you take your bath?
We barely had enough water to drink, and I don't recall having a bath for several months. And when I first got my real bath was when they shipped me to Japan, and they run us through a tank to disinfect us, threw away our clothes. We were allowed to wash outside of a large tank, and then after we were cleaned up, we were allowed to get into the water and soak for a little while. But that's the first real bath I had for several months as a prisoner.
Oscar. How long? Your baths.
At the Mitzi Madhouse, they had a bathhouse. Usually the water was cold, and often the Simpako group, which were unloading coal and all, would get to bathe, and it was very dirty water before, and most of us just sponged off at the cold water out in the where they had it fixed for washing dishes and everything else.
I'm sure all of you were sick in the camps. Can you list off all the diseases that you had? All the diseases that you had while you were a prisoner?
Well, I was pretty lucky. I had beriberi, dry beriberi, and I don't ever remember having anything besides that. I had a couple of teeth pulled without any anesthetic, but I don't remember ever being. The only thing I can remember is being hungry. I was about 98 pounds when I got out.
I had a few things wrong. I had diarrhea when I hit Japan. Then I got over that. And then I got beriberi. There are two kinds of beriberi, the wet and the dry. I had the dry, and it's called electric feet. And boy, I'll tell you, if you get electric feet, you've got beriberi anyway. And then I had pneumonia. I had 105 fever. The guy beside me had pneumonia. He died overnight. I survived.
Bill, did you have diseases, and if so, can you list them for us?
What? Oh, yes, I had malaria. I had dysentery. Had dry beriberi. And the pain was so intense, you would take a stick and beat on your feet trying to divert the pain. And outside of that, I guess that lasted for a while. And then when I got to they took me to the zero ward, I woke up and I did have a little bath. They were trying to rinse me off with cold water. And I saw the bodies lying up outside that they were taken for the daily burial details, which was about 100 every day. And I guess that's what made me come out of it. And I went over to the other side of the camp. And I gradually come out a little bit. We're getting a little bit of food and a little bit of water. So I did come out a little bit after that.
Yes, I had dysentery, and I had wet beriberi and dry beriberi at different times. And whenever the Japs could see that you had the wet beriberi, well, they'd always hit you on the legs or the feet to make sure that you realized that you were in pain.
You saw a lot of friends die. A lot of your buddies died. Why is it that you think you survived?
Well, I've always wondered that why I made it. I guess I was stubborn and I just wouldn't give up.
I've asked that question many times. Number one, I was lucky. I had about 4 times I could have died. But one other thing was the fact that I worked. Believe it or not, work is a good word. And I had to work out there under their control, under their direction, and do what they said. But it kept my mind off of whether my electric feet was going to stop or not, or just what else is going to happen. But work is what made me survive, I do believe.
Were you ever given last rites?
No.
Why do you think you survived, Bill?
I honestly don't know. I don't think I ever really thought consciously of dying. I was scared of being killed by the Japanese with it bayoneting and shooting, but I don't know. I never gave it a thought about dying except being killed.
I think the reason that I survived was that I never gave up hope that something better was going to happen. There was some of us that got together and always figured that they always bragged that they would get to kill us at the end of the war, and we always planned that we would take at least one of them with us when we went. And I think that the hatred and all that we had kept, because once the man gave up the hope that something better was going to happen, he would pass away. I've had guys tell me on the way home from work, when working home, that they were just tired of it all and was unhappy with everything, and they would be dead by the morning once they gave up that hope. And I at Beale Air Force Base on POW days, why they informed us that that is one of the things that they are training the guys that are expected to be in battle to never give up that hope that you're going to make it.
What was your weight at liberation? How much did you weigh? And how did you find out that the war was over?
How much I weighed? Well, I don't ever remember being really weighed in the prison camp, but at Repo Depot 29 in Manila, I had been there about 2 weeks eating any food that I wanted, and when they weighed me, I weighed 85 pounds, and we found out. I found out early on the 2nd of August that the war had done, because I was in the old counterintelligence corps, and one of the agents that had been in Tokyo all the time came to the prison camp where I was at Hayachi in the coal mines, and had told the guards to release me at about 2 o'clock in the morning on the morning of the September 2nd. And I was the only prisoner that got beyond the Missouri, and the only reason for that was that MacArthur had made a ruling that no POW would be released until the 26th of the month.
How much did you weigh?
I was down to about 90 pounds, and that was when I started. I was at 206. As far as I knew when the war was over, the Americans were coming over and bombing with fire bombs, and they would come over into our camp when I was in Japan working the coal mines. They were burning up the coal fields, and they burned up a barracks and part of a fence in our camp. And several days later, I was on the mine, injured my leg, and we never heard anything about Hiroshima, but I was up I'd injured my leg, and I was sitting outside the building, and I saw this plane go over, and down toward what I later learned was Nagasaki. I saw the bomb explode, and we thought maybe they hit an ammo dump or something. And about 2.5 days later, I woke up in camp, and the Japanese were gone. There were no guards or nothing, and we were informed that the war was over. And I was there for about close to a month before I got out.
How much did you weigh when you were liberated?
My normal weight was about 150. I got down to a little under 60 kilos. They had an old platform scales out at the shipyard, and that'd be about 130 pounds. But I stayed same weight, but I saw some bad cases of, they bring some ship man in, we call him Billy Sunday. He was a beautiful build on him. In 3 months' time, he was down to the diet that we were all getting, and he died. Didn't last.
Well, my normal weight was, I was only 19 years old. My normal weight was 129. And when I was liberated, I weighed 198 pounds. The Russians freed me. That's when I found out the war was over, and I was glad to see them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Thompson. And our 4 POWs up here.
You did fine, see?
That concludes session 1. McMinnville, they are to the museum tour. Is that correct, Mr. McIrvin? You are on your way. Don't be late. Mr. Deacon, you're getting taken to the theater. You're the speaker there. And we have a 10-minute break. You out-of-state veterans, actually, we have student hosts here if you want some coffee or water or something, and bathroom anytime you need something, and then we'll get 3 more of you up here for the next session. You and your son? He'd like some coffee right here.